Alright, so welcome back to Driveway. We are still getting back onto the prototype vehicle here. So, as you can probably see, I kind of got some thought processes rolling in my head, and we're going to start working on our control arms for the upper side of the front. As you can tell, this bar is way too high, so we're going to have to work on getting it down there. Okay, well, back to what I was saying. This bar is way too high, and I think, after kind of looking at this, part of me wanted to keep these uprights where they are, but it's like the more I think about it, that guy's gonna interfere with our future fender on there, and add to that, we're gonna have to get some massive bending and movement, which is kind of going to mess up our suspension if your arms get way too long, because then as you cycle, the top will be much longer than the bottom and your camber is going to change, which sometimes isn't a horrible concept, but we want to keep that change pretty low, because the last thing we want to do is dial in a decent camber for a track, and then as you cycle through, it just completely removes your camber from you. So, in my opinion, probably, I would almost think that longer top arms might be the best way to go if you have to have one longer than the other. Because if you think about it, as you hit into downforce, your suspension would go down a little more, which with longer arms would potentially flatten it out a little bit. So then you'd have more stability and straight line. Then when you slow down, the camera would come back up, take the corners. But then you could look at it, you're loading the corner, and then that would flatten out that. So it's all just a big mess. Since we're not actually going to be racing for money and actual racing, we're just going to have some fun. We just want something that'll handle halfway decent. So I think what I'm going to do is the bar, I'm going to chop it right off, kind of wherever the wheel's at. Then we'll just drop our Heim joint down to match where it's at, and we'll call it close enough. We've got some bolting bulkheads on the side of it, so we'll run a section of side panel there to bolt into that as well. Then we'll just weld it all up to it. I think that's probably kind of a cast iron-ish type of thing, so welds aren't super fun. So that's where I'm going to drill and tap bolts to hold the bracket as well, and then we'll preheat the thing and layer down as hard as we can. How that'll work, who knows? We'll find out. A bunch of you will probably say that I'll kill myself and everybody else, but hey, we'll find out one way or another, won't we? Anyways, I guess I should get a saw out, chop them arms off, and see how big of a mess I create. Worst thing that could happen is I have to redo them all over again. Yay. Now if I was a real bright person, I would have swapped all these brand new spindles onto the rear and then take those old ones and chop them up. But you know, that's gonna take a lot more effort, and I don't feel like it. So, I think I'm just going to start hacking, and we'll see what we end up with. All right, so like I was saying, this guy, we're gonna come down, probably down into here, right above where these bolt bosses are. We're just gonna lob this thing off. This will get the control arm down here and will be much better for getting a good angle to keep our upper bars straight. Otherwise we'd have to come out straight, probably go down at an angle and then back straight in kind of a modified Z. And that just doesn't sound like fun. So if we can get this dropped down, then we'll have a straight shot with a single bar, and that would make things a lot nicer. So I'm just going to mark where I think it should chop off at. If we got any issues, we'll realign it afterwards, but that's what we're rolling with. So I'm getting chopping. You can watch me hack the crap out of this thing. All right, so the biggest difficulty is just trying to get this thing repeatable. So we're probably going to start with that guy there. Okay, well that's not too bad. So, guess we need to and there we go. Hopefully I don't regret this because it's been done. This stuff definitely looks like cast iron. You can somewhat get the idea of what type of metal it is when you grind it. Versus steel. Hopefully you can see the difference of the sparks. One, they really billow off, and the cast iron, they don't really. I could also tell that it was cast iron from when I drilled out the top bolt to run the heim through it, because the cast iron grabs a lot more. Essentially, if this was like a cast steel, I probably would have hacked it off a lot earlier, but I was slightly worried with it being cast iron with the fact that welding to it, not ideal. So that's where I think if we put, like if we come up and put a plate up here and put a hole in it, and then we plate along the sides of it, I think we'll be at a pretty decent spot. And we'll probably want our joint probably be out here. We want to kind of keep it in line with the lower ball joint, so that way when we turn the wheels it doesn't do weird stuff. So if we get this guy pretty much there, get a hole in it, Then we can get a bracket over there. Maybe if we double it up, get a hole through there, we can weld that on. Then when we come through with the other bracket, there's room that we can slide it up. Maybe we can come out there. Something like that. All right, well, I got this top section drilled and tapped, and then we're going to reuse these mounts over there for, I think it was maybe to hook the brake line to, just as a extra locating spot. So we can just put in a couple bolts here. And there we go. I would think that would be sizable enough to do what we need it to. So now we just need to throw her on in and see what we're looking at. Thinking we might need to washer it up a little bit more. All right, time for a little mid-build update. As you can see, we bolted on, or welded on, that circle pad. So we had a spot to throw these on. And of course our bar that goes across that we were talking about earlier. And we got that attached between with a super beefy tube here. This guy is about 1/4 inch thick, so it's 1.5 inches, super large. We definitely don't need it that large, but what I wanted to do is I wanted to be able to come in with this second bar and just brace it right up, right off that bar. So that way, this thicker bar can take all that we want. I mean, we could even come through and junk it down here, but we're not gonna go that crazy. But anyways, that's what we're gonna do next. Kind of figure out where we wanna hook this guy in to make it line up and operate in the same plane as everything else. Since we have to come out from here somewhere, I was trying to figure out a good way to make that work and make it look halfway decent. So what I ended up with was this wonderful bracket. Just a couple tubes with a plate welded on, and then a circle plate welded on top of that for a little extra beef. And this pretty much will just mount right up to the side. So once we get this mostly in where we need it, we'll just figure out where our angle for here needs to be. I mean, we can go all the way up there. So maybe if we just bring it straight down here, we'll be at a good spot. That way we got a decent down, decent up travel. Thereabouts. All right, so we got our rods all nicely welded up. They're doing their thing. So now what we're gonna do is probably dial in our initial suspension settings. So we'll get our caster. Maybe like 3 degrees of caster. And we're at 1.5 camber. Let's go to 2 on the camber. So 2 on the, oopsies. Man, dropping a magnet in the middle of a fabrication zone is not a good thing. All right, caster at 3, camber at 2. So that puts us pretty much right about here. So that means we need a little more of this rolled out. Right about there. I think that'll work. Alright, so basically speaking, this section is locked in. Let's check our caster. We're at about 2. Let's straighten this thing back up. There you go. When we're at full on straight, we're at about 2.5. It's not too bad. So, that's one. Now the fun part will be to see if this weird setup here actually works decently. I haven't really seen too many that are kind of this weird style triangle. You'll see a lot of like straight bars with like a crossbar on drag vehicles sometimes, but never really seen one kind of like this. So that'll be interesting. Main reason I did this way was so when I've got this guy here, I can have the pivot come up somewhere in here to run for our shocks. So, I guess that means I need to take everything that I did to this side and replicate it on the other. That's gonna be something. That certainly looks like an accomplishment, if I do say so myself, which of course I am. So, that looks like a complete set of arms. Once I dial in a little better, I'm going to put a couple crossbars in there to help stiffen it up a little bit and make it so it doesn't attempt to bend or anything stupid. So, finished welding will be done when I blow everything apart and get it all zapped up. So that's pretty nice. All right, so that wraps up the arm build. I believe next time we're going to tackle the suspension so we can get this thing full rolling status. And then probably after that, we're gonna do something with steering. And once we got the steering, then we're just weld her up and we'll be pretty much good to go. We'll have to do body parts, but hey, we could at least get this thing operating and for the most part even running before we even tackle those body parts. So that's going to be our run for this time. I think she's looking pretty good. So make sure you're subscribed so you can tune in for more work on this vehicle and possibly some others once we finish here. But anyways, thanks for stopping by and watching. Hopefully we'll get to see you again later.